Greetings, Gamer Nation. I'm Eliza Lambert. So you've played D&D, you've fought kobolds that eat babies and researched the ecology of the ochre. The ochre jelly, that is. What else does the world of tabletop role-playing games have to offer you? Today, we're here to discuss Blue Rose, the RPG of romantic fantasy. Here I have a few of the game's creators. Gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Chris Pramis. I'm the founder of Green Ronin Publishing and also its president. And I designed the adventure game engine that powers Blue Rose.
And I'm Steve Kenson. I'm a staff designer with Green Ronin Publishing. I did the development work on the first edition of Blue Rose, as well as on the current Age System edition.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to talk
Pleasure.
nerdy. All right, so first off, what is romantic fantasy? I'm unfamiliar with that genre.
So romantic fantasy, as we describe it, is essentially a subgenre of fantasy fiction that is very heavily focused on especially coming-of-age stories and stories about communities and found family, and is often a genre that is very strongly associated with women writers like Mercedes Lackey and Tamora Pierce, and is often a genre that is more focused on characters who are either growing up or are involved in building or maintaining a home for themselves and their friends and their families, rather than necessarily out on the badlands of civilization, exploring dark ruins or hunting for treasure per se.
So this would be a genre for someone who loves writing the backstory for their characters and their NPCs?
Yes.
Ah.
Yes.
This is my genre then. This is what I should start getting into next.
If your character has an in-character journal, then you will enjoy Blue Rose. Odds are.
My campaigns that we do, I've been told by my show's co-creator, Ben Riggs, that I'm actually playing the wrong game by playing D&D, because my favorite part in the campaigns that we have, our favorite part is writing the backstory for these characters and making them as kooky and crazy as possible, and sometimes even sabotaging missions, just for the heck of it.
Yeah, one of the things that's also different about Blue Rose is that the game starts, at least, and generally maintains a base in a genuinely good nation that's a meritocracy, and instead of sort of trying to carve out a kingdom with your own hand, you're actually trying to protect your the people of your country against internal and external threats. And in many campaigns, that means that you're a member of the Sovereign's Finest, which is like an elite organization that aids the kingdom in various ways.
One of the conceits of Blue Rose as a concept was, if we take some of the fantasy elements that you find in fantasy worlds like D&D, and if people have things like the magical power to detect when people are lying, or the magical power even to detect, to read what's in someone's heart, to know if they are really a good person, imagine what a society could do with that. And that's exactly what the Sovereignty of Aldous does. Essentially, there's a test for nobles, because noble is an earned role in their society. You go through a series of tests to prove that you're worthy of being entrusted with this responsibility. And the last test is a magical one called the test of the Blue Rose Scepter, that essentially determines if you are good at heart. It's not absolutely infallible, because it only determines if you're good at heart then, And nobles have fallen by the wayside. Things happen, but generally it means that the people in charge in all this are generally good people who have the interests of their nation and their people at heart.
So would that be a pretty complete summarization of what the characters do in this game? Is kind of.
Well, like Chris said, the player characters most often are members of the Sovereign's Finest. They don't necessarily have to be, and we talk about a number of different other sort of alternative campaign frameworks. But the general idea is that envoys of the Sovereign's Finest are these sort of elite troubleshooters who the Sovereign calls upon to deal with all kinds of challenges, ranging from traveling between the sort of distant outer villages of Aldous and sort of being the sheriff in town, coming into town and saying, okay, what are the townsfolk's problems? We need to deal with some of these. Oh, there's been, raids along the hinterlands from bandits. We need to help that. Oh, there's also this local dispute we need to settle. But they may also be involved as envoys for a diplomatic mission to one of the neighboring nations, or even doing sort of espionage work against the evil nation of Kern to the north that is still ruled by the regents and the remnants of the evil sorcerer kings.
They're not nice.
So
no.
So as someone like myself who's only played D&D before, what will I find familiar in your game versus different?
Chris, you want to talk about the game system first?
Yeah, sure. So there are some familiar things. There are classes, there are levels, but there's only 3 classes. There's mage, rogue, and warrior. But you have things called specializations. So starting at 4th level, you can differentiate between the characters by having people take different specializations that give them other powers and more role-playing focus and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The core of the adventure game engine uses 3d6 for resolution instead of a d20. And what this allows is the stunt system, which is kind of the killer app of adventure game engine games. So it works like this. When you're going to do something, you get your 3 dice and you roll them. 2 of the dice are one color and the 3rd die is a different color. This is called different things in different age games. In Blue Rose, it's the drama die. So if you're rolling to do something and you roll doubles, then you look at the drama die and see what the number is on it, and you generate that many stunt points. And then depending on what you're doing, you consult different stunt tables and then decide what you're going to do with your stunt points. So there's an array of stunts that generally cost between 1 and 6 stunt points, and you can mix and match or go for one big one. So if you got like a 5, you could get a 5-point stunt, or a 2, 2, and a 1, or a 3 and a 2, or whatever. So there's stunts for role-playing, combat, and exploration, and they each have a different flavor. Because you've got a 44% chance of rolling doubles on any given roll, like stunts happen all the time. It's not like, oh, I have a 5% chance of doing something cool. Like, you're doing cool things all the time, and you get to narrate, like what you do to get the mechanical effects of the stunt. So, yeah.
Cool. Are there any specific stunts that you can remember that might entice me?
There's a whole array of different stunts, from role-playing stunts where you make like a really great first impression, upon walking into a room, that gives you sort of an advantage in other social situations that happen in that scene, to the combat stunt where you deftly disarm your opponent and send their weapon flying away. or the exploration stunts where your perception allows you to notice certain details, so that when the trap or the ambush gets sprung, your character gets a bonus to initiative or gets the ability to act first in order to reflect their preparation. So it's those kind, and there's a whole range. Each type of stunt has easily a good dozen or so different options that you can work with.
Yeah, when I was designing the Dragon Age role-playing game, which was the start of this system, Stunts started as kind of a dynamic critical hit system for combat. But during the playtests, people were like, this is the coolest part of the game. We wish we could do it in things outside of combat. And so that's when we added spell stunts. There's those as well in the games that have magic, and chase stunts later.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff.
And one particular twist that we added in Blue Rose that has found its way into other age system games is we built in a system of what we call relationships into the game, where players define specific important relationships for their characters. And this can be a connection with a close friend or a loved one, or it can be a bond of sworn vengeance with an enemy, or even a strong connection with an ideal or a nation or a cause. And that relationship, those relationships have a numerical value that defines their strength in game terms, and players can draw on those relationships for bonus stunt points when they're doing things that are particularly concerned with that relationship. So if you are rescuing your beloved who's been kidnapped by bandits, or if you are finally getting a chance to fight your hated enemy, on top of the parapets, then that's an opportunity for you to draw on that relationship bond and get extra stunt points so that you can do even more cool, spectacular things.
Which is what we want, right?
Exactly.
Also, we have somehow failed to mention that Blue Rose also includes intelligent psychic animals, and you can play them. So
I was going to get to that.
How would you forget to mention that?
Right. So
yeah, you can be a psychic cat or whatever.
Yes.
All sorts of different animals. So.
Beyond just the game system elements, there are some setting elements that are different from D&D, in that the different peoples of Aldia, the world of Blue Rose, are different from your usual sort of fantasy dwarves and elves and the like. Like Chris mentioned, one is the Ronin, who are awakened animals who are intelligent, aware, and have psychic abilities. There are also the Vada, who are descendants of an ancient arcane race of people who have innate magical abilities. The Night People, who are the creations of the sorcerer kings using their flesh crafting arts to create a servant race who eventually rebelled, many of them. And now some of them have found sanctuary and are beginning to build their own civilization and culture in places like Aldous, as well as the Sea Folk, who are amphibious people who dwell along the rivers and shores and can live underwater for extended periods of time.
Very cool. So tell me, what are each of your peak moments in Blue Rose, whether you're playing or running?
So I was running a game. It was on. It was a stream. It was shot at the Penny Arcade Studio, but it was actually a different group. Anyway, so I was running a game, and so I was using the pre-generated characters that come with the Game Master's kit, and one of them is a trans character, And I saw, one of the players' eyes just light up when she was reading that background and being like, I'm going to play this, and then there was, during the game, there were like these emotional moments where she recognized, the struggles this young child was having, and was immediately like, oh, baby, let me care for you and show you that life's not always terrible. And yeah, it was
Oh,
cool to
that's so
see,
sweet.
because we always talk about people want to see themselves in games. So it was cool to just witness, somebody recognize themselves in a character and be really excited about it. So that was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, one of the things the romantic fantasy genre is known for is coming of age stories. And one of the elements that we wanted to really build into the setting was to make it a really inclusive setting. So we talk very clearly in the setting material about Aldia and about Aldous' culture, about people's attitudes towards romance, towards relationship, towards people of different genders, to people of different orientations, different relationship structures, whether they're polyamorous or monogamous. And a lot about the place that people of different orientations or transgender people hold in that culture specifically. So, we really wanted to make sure that the culture reflected that, sort of element.
Well, thank you. That's such an important thing to do, especially to start getting some more interest in the younger generations. You got to make the games get with the times.
Well, the original game, which used what's called the True 20 system that Steve designed, that came out in 2005, and the difference between 2005 and today, as far as social stuff goes, is pretty big. And it was really hatefully received in some quarters because of what we're trying to do. So, but yeah, there's been a very noticeable change in the intervening years.
Yeah. Well, thank you for keeping it going, especially with how cruel the world was in 2005. It's not 100% better, but it's a good chunk better. It's on the right direction. So totally switching gears from serious topics of current social issues. Can you tell me a little bit about the creative team behind the game? I know we got the two of you today, but it's not just you two.
Well, there's a pretty good list of people who are involved because, like Chris said, the original edition of Blue Rose was published in 2005. And the initial concept for the game was worked on by John Sneed and Don Elliott and Alejandro Melchor. Then that material was developed by me and Jeremy Crawford, who many folks who play D&D nowadays know very well for his work at Wizards of the Coast. Yeah. In fact, Blue Rose was, I'm pretty sure, Jeremy's first RPG project.
It was, yeah. He was a friend of a friend. He was like, oh, I know a guy who's interested in, doing some editing work in development work in RPGs. And I was like, okay, I'll give him a try. And now he's like runs the 5th edition rules team. So there you go.
And so Jeremy and I did a lot of work back and forth on the development of the setting and the game system material and the like. After the success of our Fantasy Age system that Chris designed, we wanted to relaunch Blue Rose under the Fantasy Age system. So I did the additional development on that and worked with Jack Norris on our staff at that time and with Lynn Hardy, who did the editing work for the 2nd edition book. And now the game is capably in the hands of Joe Carricker, who's the current developer, and is doing the supplemental products like the Aldous City book and some of our upcoming products.
Joe also wrote the first Blue Rose novel.
Yes.
It's called Shadow Tide, and it's really good.
How many Blue Rose novels are there?
Currently, there's one. But
Yeah.
there are also
the first Blue Rose novel, also
Yeah.
the only.
Yeah, well, so Joe's working on a sequel, and then we've also published some anthologies. So there's is it Sovereigns of the Blue Rose is a collection of short stories that's basically about the different sovereigns that have ruled the kingdom going back hundreds of years. So there's a story about each one.
Each of them.
Kind of the idea of that. And then there's some more general ones as well. So there's a bunch of short fiction, and there will be more novels as well.
Love to hear it. Love to hear
Yeah.
it. The art in this game is fantastic. Like, I'm going to try to give the viewers a little bit of a good view of just the cover. Yeah. But as I was looking through it, there's just so much rich, beautiful art in here. Can you tell me a little bit about your artists and who does this work for you?
Yeah, so our cover artist for Blue Rose, going back to 2005, was Stephanie Law, and she's just terrific. And she really helped define the look of Blue Rose. So we really got more than just cover art out of her. And then there was, about 10 years in between the first edition and the Age edition, and her old covers are great. But then, like, you can tell that she has 10 more years of experience, because that cover is like top
far
notch.
and away.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were very, very lucky that when the Age edition of Blue Rose came around, that Stephanie was willing to do another cover for us, because she had justly become far more famous in the 10 years since.
But it's a real eye catcher. Like, when we're at Gen Con or other conventions, people walk by the booth, particularly women, and they see that cover and they make a beeline for it. Like, what's this? So it's it's doing its job. And,
I mean, the world of RPGs, it is relatively male dominated. So speaking as another woman in the world of nerdy RPGs and all that jazz, it's definitely a welcoming cover, because some of the covers that you see, they're very much like geared towards the violent side of things or the dark side of things. And not saying that there aren't women who like those things, but just seeing the gentle touch and kind of the warmth to the cover and the colors chosen, it's more inviting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the look of the game stylistically is different than D&D and games of that type, because it's not like dudes in heavy plate armor, or rippling muscle ogres or whatever,
or scantily clad women.
The clothing style is more like historic Age of Sail,
right?
So it's more sort of swashbuckly and lighter, and colorful as well. So
yeah. And we really, especially in the second edition of the book, our art director, Hal Mangold, made a very specific effort. Folks will notice that there's a really nice variety of people in the illustrations, in that there are people who are of different ages. There's one particular image I like of a group of friends who are toasting around a table. Actually, there are two like that. One is a group of friends who are toasting, who are clearly have been friends for a long time, because they're all white-haired and still very vital, but are clearly older. And there's another of a group of friends who are clearly having a night out in a tavern. And the best part is they are all women. And are enjoying each other's company in the image, and we try to have characters of different backgrounds and ethnicities and the like, to show some of the diversity of the setting through its art.
Well, I am fully hooked. So what do people need to play this games, and where can they get it? I've got the book and I've got my dice sets. What else do I need?
So there is a free Blue Rose Quick Start, which you can download off our website. And that is enough rules to play, pre-generated characters, and an adventure. So, you know, the first hit is free, kids. And then if you like that, you then move on to the core rule book, which is what you were holding up. And then from there, you got some choices. There's an anthology of adventures called Six of Swords that has some shorter adventures. But then we're just about to release, as soon as the boat gets here, Envoys to the Mount, which is a whole campaign that goes through all 4 tiers of play and multiple game years. And there's also a tie-in fiction anthology coming out at the same time called Tales from the Mount, and those are releasing together. And we got a big city book, Aldous, which is all about the capital of the Kingdom of the Blue Rose. Big book, locations, characters, adventure ideas, all kinds of stuff.
Packed with all just tons of setting detail and interesting NPCs to interact with. And, you know, just you could set your players loose and just have them wander around and meet people for game sessions.
Then there's a narrator's kit. It's like a hardback GM screen. And those stunts I was talking about, it comes with a bunch of like laminated cards that have the different sorts of stunts on them. So you can just hand those to the players. And, you know, if it's like, oh, you're going to do a role-playing stunt, just hand them the right reference. And it's right there instead of flipping through the book. So that's handy.
Oh, that's super handy. That's super intelligent to have. That's a good job. A good idea.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's almost as if you know what you're doing.
This is our 21st year in business.
So one would hope, yeah. Do I need a full dice set to play, or because I know some people I've interviewed, they only require 1 dice size?
Yeah, you only need D6s, and you
only
just
D6s.
need to make sure when you make a set, it's 2 dice of one color and a 3rd die of a different color.
Yeah.
We do also have official Blue Rose dice.
Indeed.
So
just
they're made by Q Workshop in Poland, who do fantastic dice.
Well, I'm always looking to collect more dice. I never can have enough. So are there any other RPGs other than yours that you think would be good for a person who's only played D&D, something that they should try next?
Well, so we do have our other Adventure Game Engine games. So we
So
should at
plug
least
your own,
mention. There's Fantasy Age, which is closer to D&D in tone. There's Modern Age, which takes the system basically into the sort of industrial revolution and forward into the near future sort of area. And that's extremely well supported with settings and rule books. We do another Age RPG that is based on the Expanse novels. It's also a TV show. So that's the sci-fi iteration. And that is also got a nice big core book, and we just released a spaceship book for it that people are going nuts for. So, so that's good. So something by other companies. That's a good question. What would I?
Never other companies, only ours.
I don't know, Steve. What do you got?
Well, I will mention for us, you know, for folks who are interested in Blue Rose and are, you know, especially having a little separation anxiety from D&D. We also have the forthcoming Blue Rose Adventurer's Guide, which is basically the adaptation of our Blue Rose setting for the 5th edition rules. So you can use the game system with which you are familiar, but all of the setting material, including the different character backgrounds, heritages, and other sorts of setting elements in the Blue Rose world in your 5th edition games, if you want to mix and match and have sort of the best of both worlds as far as that goes.
That's at print right now.
It's in print right now, so it's not released, or
It's in pre-order on our website.
Yes, and you can get the PDF today if you want.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But for,
Well, is there?
I was going to say, but if we're talking about game systems, if we're talking about game systems that are not Green Ronin, I will say that Free RPG Day inspired me to take a closer look at the Star Trek Adventures game that Modifius is doing, because I'm a lifelong Trekkie and have played numerous Star Trek RPGs in one form or another, and it looks like a really fun game. So,
if I'm being honest, I didn't even know Star Trek RPGs existed, but now that I do, I'm definitely going to go check some out. I've seen all of Next Generation. I've seen all of Voyager. I'm working my way through Picard.
I worked on a previous version that came out 1999 or something like that, 98, 99, by a company called Last Unicorn that was acquired by Wizards of the Coast and now no longer exists. But they did several Star Trek RPG games.
Yeah, I think that was 2 RPGs ago, roughly.
That's right. Because then there was, it's a long story.
Let's do another interview just talking about all the Star Trek RPGs.
You easily could.
Maybe for a future episode, that might be a fun idea.
I should probably mention Feng Shui, which is another game that I've written for, although that was back in the 90s. But there's a new edition that was kickstarted just a few years ago by Atlas Games, and Feng Shui is basically the Hong Kong action role-playing game. So you can play like drunken masters and gangsters with pistols and all the stuff you see in Hong Kong movies. There's hopping vampires, everything. And it's got a fun time travel thing where you can travel like from ancient China or into the future, and each of those is a different juncture that is controlled by different power groups that are fighting against each other in what's called the secret war. And sometimes you can force reality to change. So if you change history in ancient China, like the whole timeline going forward can be changed by that. So it's a big deal. So in this, your characters are super competent just to start with. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff. So that's fun.
Well, is there anything you would like to add before we get this wrapped up? Either of you?
Is there anything like that? Next year, we are going to be releasing another adventure game engine game, and this one is based on the Broken Earth trilogy of novels by N.K. Jemisin. And so we're going to be kickstarting that and then releasing it later next year. And if you haven't read those books, they're really amazing, and each one of them won was it a Hugo?
Hugo.
Hugo Award, which no one's ever done before. So so we're really looking forward to that, and that's actually one thing Steve's working on right now.
Indeed.
Well, I'll keep an eye out for that. That's super cool. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Viewers, if you're interested in what we got lined up for our little channel, I will be learning about the Call of Cthulhu and then Mothership. Our show's producer and co-creator, Ben Riggs, has a book on RPG adventure design theory called Encounter Theory, available on drivethrurpg.com right now. Check the show notes if you're interested. And if you like what you hear today, email us at afterdndplay@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at AfterDND. So hit that subscribe button below to never miss an episode and tell a friend about the show. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Eliza Lambert, your guide to your next great geeky game. Signing off.